My name is Riley Morgan. I'm 29 years old. And until 3 weeks ago, I hadn't heard from my mother in over 3 years. Not a text, not a call, not even a forwarded holiday email. So when her name suddenly lit up my phone screen with a syrupy little, "Hey, honey," I knew something was off. At the time, I was sitting cross-legged on my living room floor, surrounded by receipts and coffee-stained tax documents. Nothing glamorous, just another Thursday night in my modest Los Angeles condo. The one I bought, repaired, and paid off with my own two hands. Her voice came through the speaker, too chipper, too rehearsed, like she was auditioning for the role of loving mother. And when she mentioned Ethan's 18th birthday party, with that fake casual, just a family get-together tone, I should have hung up right there. But I didn't. Some part of me, the part that still remembered Sunday pancakes and bedtime stories, even if they were always for Ethan, hesitated. So I went. I walked straight into that backyard, past the balloons and the cheap smiles and the practice small talk. And by the end of the night, I left with a bruised cheekbone, a shattered phone, and a reason to unlock the envelope my grandfather left me 4 years ago. What I found inside? It didn't just change the game, it changed the entire board. If you're watching this, drop a comment below and tell me. What would you do if the family that once erased you suddenly realized you held the deed to everything they thought was theirs? And don't forget to hit that subscribe button, because trust me, you're going to want to see how this unfolds. The phone buzzed again before I answered. I was sitting on the floor of my living room, sorting through a stack of receipts for tax season, when her voice, too chipper, too polished, spilled through the speaker. "Riley." "Gosh, you still sound the same. How are you, sweetie?" I froze. Not because I didn't expect the call. She and Dad had both been playing this slow, confusing game for weeks now, but because I still hadn't figured out the rules. One day, it was a text from Dad with nothing but a waving emoji. The next, Mom asking about my condo with this fake casualness, as if we were the kind of family who chatted over brunch. "Did you ever finish paying off that condo?" she'd asked last week, like the question just popped into her head and wasn't a scalpel disguised as curiosity. And now this, a full phone call, an actual, "Hey, honey." "I'm fine," I said carefully, eyes narrowing. "That's so good to hear. Listen," she continued, ignoring the ice in my tone. "We're throwing a little something for Ethan's birthday this weekend. Nothing huge, just some close family and friends. He's turning 18, can you believe it?" I could. I'd been counting the years since I left that house with a duffel bag and $73 in tips from the diner job I worked at 17. I'd paid my own way through college, slept in shared apartments with 2 or 3 roommates at a time, ate instant ramen more often than I cared to admit. Meanwhile, they'd been posting photos of Ethan's new drum set, his overseas robotics camp, the investment property they put under his name. Still, I kept my voice steady. 18. Yeah, big milestone. There was a pause on her end. Then the voice came back, sugar-dipped and coaxing. "He misses you, Riley. He asks about you more than you'd believe." I didn't answer right away. My stomach tightened. The room felt smaller somehow. A little too quiet, a little too still. Maybe it was the way she said, "misses you," like he'd lost a sock or a childhood toy. She filled the silence. "It would mean the world to him if you came. Sunday around 4. Just dinner and cake. Nothing crazy." I stared at the small crack on my living room wall. I had spent 2 years fixing this condo, painting it myself, laying down the flooring in the kitchen, even installing the closet shelves one nail at a time. I had paid every installment with my name, my hands, my hours. And now, 3 years of silence later, they were calling like nothing had happened? "I'll think about it," I said. "Oh, Riley." She sighed, her voice softening into something resembling vulnerability. "You're always so guarded. I know things got tense after college, but this could be a fresh start. Family is still family, you know?" I bit my lip. Part of me wanted to hang up. But another part, the part that still remembered Sunday pancakes and bedtime stories, even if they were always for Ethan, hesitated. There was a thread somewhere deep inside me that hadn't completely frayed yet. "All right," I said finally. "I'll come." She practically clapped. "Wonderful. I'll text you the address. Oh, and if you still have those property papers, maybe bring them along. Your dad had a few questions." My heart stilled. "What property papers?" "Oh, honey, the condo. Just some legal housekeeping, nothing urgent. He was just wondering, how things are structured, who's on the title, that sort of thing." I didn't answer. Not right away. She didn't press. "See you Sunday?" she chirped before hanging up. I stared at my phone long after the line went dead. I knew now. This party wasn't about Ethan at all. Still holding the phone, I moved across the room to a small wooden drawer tucked beneath my bookshelf. I pulled it open with slow fingers. Inside, neatly organized, were a few photos, my old student ID, and a stack of letters from Grandpa. The kind with faded ink and that comforting, spidery handwriting that smelled faintly of pipe tobacco and paper time had almost forgotten. I shuffled through them until I reached the envelope. Yellowed at the edges, slightly curled, untouched for years. I didn't open it. Not yet. But I held it in my palm like it had weight. Outside, the sun dipped behind the palm trees lining my block. The shadows stretched longer across the floor. And for the first time in years, I wasn't sure whether I was walking into a celebration or a trap. The house looked the same, down to the dented mailbox I once kicked after an argument. But the moment I stepped through the gate, it felt like enemy territory. The front lawn was aggressively manicured, the same dull green perfection from when I was a kid. Balloons bobbed in the summer air, and someone had tied a banner that read, "Ethan's 18th," in bold blue letters across the porch rail. Laughter floated over the hedge from the backyard. Too light, too forced. I tightened my grip on the gift bag, a boxed watch wrapped in silver, and walked up the path. The porch creaked the way it always had. For a moment, I imagined I was 16 again, sneaking in after curfew. But that thought evaporated as soon as I rang the doorbell. Janice opened it, arms already wide, perfume hitting me before her voice did. "Riley," she beamed. "Oh, sweetheart, look at you." I stiffened as she pulled me in, her hug too long, too tight, her lips brushing my cheek in a theatrical display of affection. Over her shoulder, I caught a glimpse of Richard near the grill, flipping burgers like nothing had changed. He raised a hand in greeting, but the smile didn't reach his eyes. "It's so good you came," she cooed as she released me. "Ethan will be thrilled." She said it like I was some childhood toy they'd lost and suddenly found again in the attic. I followed her around the side gate to the backyard. The place was packed. Neighbors, extended family, a few kids I vaguely recognized as Ethan's classmates. There were streamers in school colors and a table sagging under potato salad and punch bowls. The moment I stepped in, heads turned. Eyes flicked toward me, then away. Aunt Margaret gave me a once-over and leaned in to whisper something to the woman beside her. Someone near the grill offered a half smile, then quickly busied themselves with chips. I pasted on my best neutral expression and scanned for Ethan. He stood near the cake, talking to someone from school. When he saw me, his face froze for a second, then recovered. He lifted a hand, almost like a wave, but then lowered it. I started toward him, but Janice's hand found my elbow. "Come with me," she said sweetly. "Just for a sec. Family stuff." I followed her through the sliding glass doors into the kitchen. Richard was already there, arms crossed, a folder on the counter. The air turned stale the moment the door clicked shut behind me. "We just need a quick signature," Janice said, all smiles. "Some property stuff. It'll take a minute." I blinked. "Excuse me?" Richard opened the folder and slid a pen across the granite counter. "You'll see it's standard. Just a transfer form. Cleaner for everyone, tax-wise. Since the condo was under the family's support during the early years, it makes sense to consolidate." "I paid for every inch of that condo," I said, voice flat. Janice laughed softly. Oh, honey, don't be dramatic. Your father helped. He co-signed when you first applied, remember? That was 8 years ago. He removed his name in 2020. I refinanced alone. Richard's hand slammed against the counter, rattling a glass. You'll sign the paper, Riley. My fingers curled at my sides. No. Janice's smile thinned into a blade. Do you really want to make a scene on Ethan's day? You made the scene when you invited me under false pretenses, I said, voice tightening. This isn't about Ethan. It never was. Richard stepped closer. His shadow stretched across my shoes. You little ingrate, he growled. My phone buzzed in my hand. Maybe instinct, maybe reflex. I looked down, thumbed it open, recording. Don't, Richard said. Then, the slap came fast, cracking the air, my cheek burning instantly. My head snapped sideways. Something popped in my ear. The phone hit the tile. Before I could reach it, Richard's boot came down. The screen spiderwebbed beneath his heel with a sickening crunch. For a second, time stopped. I straightened, slow and silent. The sting on my face pulsed in time with my heartbeat. I wiped my lip. Red. My sleeve soaked it up. No tears. No words. I looked at them, both of them, and saw strangers. I walked to the sliding door, slid it open. The music had died. Or maybe it was still playing and my mind just tuned it out. Everyone had seen. No one said a word. Ethan stood by the cake, a plate in his hand, fork midair. He didn't move. Aunt Margaret blinked fast and looked away. Mr. Jenkins, our old neighbor with the permanent sun visor, had his phone out, still filming. His eyes met mine, unreadable. Then he lowered the device and stepped back. I didn't run. I walked, past the paper lanterns, past the cheap folding chairs and tacky streamer arches, past the place where they used to set up my childhood swing set. As I reached my car, I touched back. Ethan was still by the cake table. He looked at me, then looked away. I didn't go looking for revenge. I just wanted answers. But what I found was power. The condo was quiet when I got home. Too quiet for a Thursday night in Los Angeles. I stood in the doorway for a full minute, keys still in hand, listening to the hum of the fridge, the occasional creak in the ceiling. My cheek had healed enough that the bruise didn't bloom purple anymore, but the memory of it lingered. Not just the slap, but the silence that followed it. The silence of Ethan, of the guests, of every single person who watched and did nothing. I dropped my keys on the counter and walked straight to the drawer. It had lived there for years. The yellowed envelope with my name in my grandfather's handwriting. I remembered the day he gave it to me, my 21st birthday. We sat under the old oak tree behind his house, and he slipped it into my backpack with no ceremony, no speech. Just a low murmur, "Open this when the time is right." I had almost thrown it away once. Thought it was just one of his usual cryptic gestures, but now the weight of it felt different. I sat on the couch and peeled it open. Inside was a key, old brass, smooth with time, and a folded note, Bank of California, Box 317, Trust Documents. I didn't sleep that night. The next morning, I walked into the Bank of California with that same envelope pressed flat in my bag and my driver's license gripped tight in my hand. The vault level smelled like dust and metal. The clerk typed in something, glanced up at me, and nodded. I signed the log. She led me through a series of thick doors into a room lined with deposit boxes. Box 317 clicked open with a satisfying weight. Inside were three things: a thick manila folder, a sealed letter from Thomas Morgan, and a document embossed with gold foil at the top. Deed transfer, 7428 Whitmore Lane. Grantee, Riley Ann Morgan. Effective date, June 10th, 2021. Her 25th birthday. I sat back on my heels. 7428 Whitmore Lane, the Morgan family home. My enemy territory. The house with the dented mailbox and overwatered lawn. The one they used as collateral for Ethan's private school loans. the one they had supposedly sacrificed so much to maintain. I flipped through the legal documents: trust structure, proof of maintenance fund, transfer affidavit notarized and witnessed. My grandfather had done it all behind the scenes. The letter was short. If you're reading this, it means they pushed too far. This house is yours. Not out of spite, but protection. Don't let them take what you built. You have more strength than you know. TM. By noon, I was in the glass tower downtown, 34th floor. Devlin and Hart. The receptionist greeted me by name and offered tea. Apparently, my grandfather had arranged for everything. Mr. Devlin met me in a minimalist conference room that overlooked the city. Nothing on the walls, just a long table and a man in a dark suit with eyes like steel and a voice like velvet. "I've been expecting you, Ms. Morgan," he said, clasping my hand firmly. "Thomas always said you'd come when you were ready." I handed him the folder. He reviewed it quickly, efficiently. No wasted motion. "Everything is in order," he said after a beat. "The trust transferred full ownership to you 3 years ago. Your parents, legally, are tenants at will. They have no entitlement without your consent." "Can I remove them?" I asked quietly. He nodded. "Yes, quietly and completely. We can file for eviction under California Civil Code. 60-day notice. No need for confrontation. It can all be done through certified mail and a court clerk." I didn't speak for a long moment. Then I said, "Draw the papers." Mr. Devlin slid a folder across the table. "Pre-drafted. Your grandfather anticipated this scenario." I picked up the pen. My hand didn't tremble. I signed. The sound of ink scratching against paper was the only noise in the room. Devlin watched me for a moment. "I should note, Ms. Morgan, this action, while entirely within your rights, will likely cause fallout. Are you prepared for that?" I met his gaze. "They already hit me in front of a crowd. I'm done bracing for impact." He nodded once and stood. "Then we'll proceed. You'll be notified as soon as the notice is delivered. Your presence is not required." I left the office lighter than I'd felt in weeks. Outside, the city buzzed with its usual chaos: traffic humming, sirens wailing somewhere far off, sun reflecting off glass in sheets of heat. I walked 3 blocks before I realized I was still holding the pen. That night, back in my condo, I sat by the window, fingers tracing the edge of the signed document. They wanted my condo. Now they'll lose their house. And they won't even hear it coming. They thought silence meant surrender. I was just waiting for the sheriff's knock. The email came in at 9:03 a.m. Subject line: "Eviction notice confirmed. Posting complete." I stared at the screen, then closed the laptop. No fanfare, no grand finale, just a quiet click. I stood by the window of my condo, coffee untouched, watching the city exhale below me. Somewhere across town, a sheriff's deputy was taping a notice to the front door of 7428 Whitmore Lane. I imagined the paper crinkling in the breeze, fluttering against that ridiculous wreath Janice always hung year-round. They wouldn't know it was coming. That was the point. 12 years ago, they hadn't warned me either. I'd come home from school to find my bags by the door. No goodbyes, no conversation. Just a muttered, "We can't afford your attitude anymore," from Richard and a stony silence from Janice. Back then, I had nowhere to go. Now, I had legal standing, financial independence, and a trust deed with my name in serif font. It was almost poetic. By noon, the voicemails began. First was Janice, her voice trembling. "Riley, honey, there's some kind of mistake. There's a paper here saying we have to leave. You didn't do this, did you?" Then Richard, snarling like a cornered animal. "You ungrateful brat. You think a few documents change the past? You want to play lawyer. Fine. But we'll see who's left standing." And finally, Ethan. His voice cracked halfway through. "Riley, what's going on? Mom's crying. Dad's tearing through drawers. The HOA president said a legal notice was served. You didn't say anything. Why? Can you call me? Please?" I didn't. Mr. Devlin had warned me this part would be the hardest, the sound of unraveling on the other end of the line. But there was no comfort in their confusion, only a strange calm in my chest, like a storm had passed and left something still behind. The knock came at 6:18 p.m. I opened the door slowly, already knowing. Ethan stood there, hair rumpled, a folded sheet in his hand, the copy of the deed. His eyes were wide, hollow. "You did this?" I didn't answer. I stepped aside, letting him in. He walked in like a ghost, barely looking at the furniture, the framed pictures. He unfolded the paper on my kitchen island, smoothing it out. His eyes scanned the lines, reading every word. "You own the house," he said flatly. "Yes." He swallowed. "Since when?" "My 25th birthday." He looked up, betrayal and disbelief carving lines in his face. "Grandpa gave it to you?" I nodded. "In a trust. It activated after he passed." His fingers curled slightly over the edge of the paper. "Why didn't you say anything?" I met his gaze. "You never asked. You just believed them." That landed like a slap. He flinched, not physically, but somewhere deep. The way someone recoils when truth cuts cleaner than cruelty ever could. For a moment, I saw the boy I used to tutor in math, the one who cried over scraped knees and begged me to help him sneak cookies from the pantry. That version of Ethan was long gone, but traces flickered behind his eyes. He looked down again. The silence stretched. Then, without another word, he folded the deed and walked to the door. I didn't stop him. He left with the paper in hand, and not a single word more. I used to dream about walking back through that door and being welcomed. Instead, I stood across the street and watched them pack. The morning was coated in haze. Not fog exactly, just the kind of dense, quiet air Los Angeles gets when the summer heat presses down early. I parked 3 houses down from 7,428 Whitmore Lane. Same street, same angle, same old tree still leaning a little too far over the Morgan driveway. The truck was already there. Movers swarmed the lawn like ants, lifting couches, boxing photo frames, tilting awkward coffee tables down the narrow path to the curb. I recognized the leather recliner Richard never let anyone sit in, and the crystal lamp Janice had always insisted came from Europe, though I knew it was a Costco find. They were losing everything they thought untouchable. I leaned against the car, arms folded. A pair of joggers passed behind me, too focused on their strides to notice. But across the street, every movement mattered. I watched Janice through the window. Her silhouette shifted behind the blinds, not frantic, but tired. Her shoulders drooped. Her face, though half-shadowed, looked grayer than I remembered. She didn't step outside. Not once. But I felt her see me. Felt her decide to pretend she hadn't. Good. Richard emerged next. He barked something to the movers, slammed the back of their SUV, then lit a cigarette like it was an act of war. He didn't look up. Didn't scan the neighborhood. Just paced in tight little circles as if stomping would undo legal filings and court dates and certified mail. It wouldn't. Ethan appeared last. He walked down the porch steps with his hands in his pockets, hoodie zipped up despite the heat. He made it halfway across the yard before stopping. His eyes flicked up. Met mine for a second. And then he turned back. I let him. This wasn't about him anymore. Somewhere to my left, I heard a soft click. I turned. Mr. Jenkins stood at the edge of his porch, watering a planter that clearly didn't need it. His phone wasn't visible, but I knew it was there. Probably in his pocket, recording as it always had. He caught my eye, nodded once. Nothing more. But that nod, it held history. He'd seen everything the day of the party. Maybe not the slap directly, maybe not the blood on my sleeve, but enough. Enough to know. A box fell off a dolly across the street, books scattering. One of the movers cursed under his breath and began to gather them up. Janice didn't come out to help. Richard didn't either. I waited until the truck was nearly full. Then I walked. Across the street. Across the years. across every memory that had haunted me since 18. I didn't knock. I didn't speak. I just stepped to the gate. The white wooden post still chipped from where I'd once thrown my bike in a fit of anger. I touched it. Just once. The wood was warm beneath my palm. Familiar. And then I let it go. I didn't walk up the path. I didn't look back. It wasn't revenge I tasted. It was release. The pen felt heavier than I expected. But when the ink dried on the sail, so did the last trace of them. It clicked against the glass tabletop. Just a standard ballpoint. The kind handed out at banks and pharmacies. Still, in my hand, it carried more weight than it should. The real estate agent, a man with tailored sleeves and the air of someone who lived for escrow deadlines, slid the final page across to me. All that was left was my signature. "Once you sign," he said, flipping through his tablet, "it'll transfer into escrow by Wednesday. The new owner's already wired the deposit. She's excited." I nodded, but didn't respond. My eyes rested on the line above my name. Grantor, Riley Morgan. It was funny. They'd tried to take a condo. In the end, I sold the whole house. The pen moved. My name formed letter by letter, looping where it always had, steady where it used to shake. By the time I lifted my wrist, the ink had dried. Outside the glass walls of the downtown office, cars slid by in slow summer afternoon traffic. I didn't linger. No need. An hour later, I stepped onto the curb outside 7428 Whitmore Lane one last time. The lawn had browned under the sun. The dented mailbox was gone. A sticker on the front window announced pending renovations, but the air, the way it hit me, was still the same. Familiar. Heavy. I walked through the open frame. The door had already been removed. The smell inside was different now. Not the faint perfume Janice used to spray on every curtain, but sawdust and dry paint. The kitchen was bare. Cabinets hung open like gaping mouths. The hallway still creaked in that spot near the third floorboard. The bedroom where I used to sleep had fresh drywall, but the shape of the windows hadn't changed. I stood in the middle of that echo and let the silence settle. Then I pulled out my phone. I didn't hesitate. I typed the message slow, deliberate. "You broke something in me that day. This is me returning the favor." I hit send. No greeting, no sign-off. Just a period. A full stop. I never expected a reply. 3 weeks passed. I didn't think I'd come back, not even to see what became of it. But one afternoon, as I walked through the neighborhood with iced coffee in hand, I caught a glimpse of soft pastels across the block. Curious, I crossed the street. Where the house once stood in cold gray and peeling shutters, now sat a cheerful little cafe. The kind with string lights over the patio and lavender bushes blooming along the path. The Honeywell, painted in cursive above the door. Through the window, I saw couples chatting, a girl with headphones tapping on a laptop, a barista swirling foam into a heart shape. Laughter rose. Someone opened the door, letting the smell of espresso and warm croissants spill out. It took me a second to realize I was smiling. I didn't go in. I didn't need to. I stood at the edge of the walkway for a moment longer, one hand in my pocket, watching strangers fill a place that had once held every ounce of my silence. Then I turned. I didn't look back. For the first time, I didn't need to. I used to think a peaceful life meant learning to forgive the past. That if I could just forget what they did, if I grew enough, succeeded enough, maybe those cuts would heal on their own. But they didn't. Wounds don't close if the people who caused them continue to walk around as if nothing ever happened. No apology, no acknowledgement. Just casual calls out of nowhere. Polished smiles, innocent questions. A birthday invitation dressed up like a peace offering. And I went. Not to forgive, but because something inside me still needed to be sure. That I hadn't imagined the cruelty, that I wasn't being too sensitive, that if I wanted to close the door for good, I had to see it one last time. I saw it, and it burned me again. My father's slap. The phone shattered at my feet, my brother's silence, The blank stares of neighbors, of relatives, of people who had once watched me grow up, all standing in that backyard, not saying a word. I walked away. No tears, no explanations, but with a clear sense that I hadn't been part of that family for a very long time. And this time, I was the one choosing to leave, not as a victim, but as someone who finally understood the rules. When I opened the envelope my grandfather left me, my hands trembled, not from fear, but from knowing I finally held the power they had always believed I lacked. Power that didn't need shouting, power that didn't need permission. I didn't need to strike back with what they had done to me. All I had to do was let them taste what they once served. Silence, detachment, the feeling of being shut out of what you thought was your home. And I did it, one step at a time. Legally, calmly, without a single insult. I don't know what they thought when they saw the notice nailed to the door. I didn't listen to the voicemails. I only remember Ethan's face when he read the paper I handed him. Something cracked in him, but I didn't stay to fix it. That was no longer my job. They left in confusion. I watched from across the street, the same spot where an 18-year-old girl once dragged a torn suitcase in the rain. This time I stood tall, empty-handed, unburdened, and I turned away. Not because I wanted them to suffer, but because I finally wanted peace. Riley didn't seek revenge. She pursued justice. The kind that doesn't bruise the skin, only rewrites the story. Her silence wasn't surrender. It was precision. A scalpel, not a hammer. When betrayal comes from family, the pain is quieter but deeper. It teaches that self-worth is not granted by blood. It must be reclaimed by choice. Sometimes those who once broke you return with hollow words and outstretched hands. But the greatest strength is knowing when not to reach back. Like the final chord of a long-forgotten melody, justice may arrive late, but it resonates louder than any apology ever could. No wall of lies can stand forever against the tide of truth. And perhaps, just perhaps, standing tall once means never having to kneel again. Thank you for staying with me until the end of this story. If this resonated with you, if you've ever faced silent betrayals, quiet battles, or moments where you had to reclaim your worth, drop a comment and let me know how you found your own closure. And if you want more stories about justice, resilience, and rewriting the narrative, hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Because sometimes, the best endings are the ones we write for ourselves.